What if you are broken up with by somebody who was pressured to break up with you by other people? Yesterday, I made a video regarding raw advice for people that are comfortable in relationships but just not happy. And it's quite honestly time to rip off the band aid and move forward because otherwise, you're just going to waste time. So, on that video, or one of the shorts regarding that video, I got a comment from somebody asking, well, what about situations where you're actually broken up with by somebody who was manipulated by the people around them to break up with you? And quite honestly, I love this question, so I'm going to dive into it. I'm going to introduce how to see it for exactly what it is, because that's what I'm all about, as well as the process of really just grieving, right? Because going through breakups, it really doesn't matter who it is or what it is or how it is. It's challenging. I mean, maybe it's not challenging for everybody, but um, I can understand that it can be a very challenging time for a lot of people, right? So let's look at it again, right? You're broken up with by somebody who was manipulated by the people around them to break up with you, right? Maybe it feels like the people around them just don't really care about them, right? They also don't care about your relationship. So, first and foremost, I'm going to look at the grieving process of it. And then I'm going to dive into seeing it for exactly what it is, right? So the grieving, right? It's a relationship, right? There are memories and feelings and experiences attached to it. It's all valid, right? Anytime you go through a breakup, it can be very challenging to just process everything, right? Like I was talking about that mountain of pain that you're probably avoiding, and that's why you're not ripping off the band-aid and going through the process, right? Mount Everest, this mountain of pain, not using Everest specifically for pain. It's just a fucking massive mountain, right? And it's intimidating, and you're like, oh, I really don't want to do this, right? This, that, and the other. So that's why you're actually delaying the process, right? And climbing up that mountain, climbing up the pain, going through the process, going through the hard journey of everything is the start of everything, right? Um, I would say maybe not every relationship, but with a lot of relationships out there, there is just a grieving process, right? We are human. We form attachments to things, and in this case, specifically people, right? With that, we get feelings attached. And with that, whenever something comes to an end, there is loss, there is grievance, right? We're human. We are sentient beings. We're sentient creatures that form attachments, we get attached, we form all these beliefs and ideas around the relationship and the people and the attachments, and that's just the way that it is. There is absolutely no shame in that. That's the way that we are, right? It is possible to be less attached and just more attuned. The more attuned you are to any person, the more aware you are of the dynamics and the overall unfolding of the relationship, right? So let me just make this very clear that when it comes to pretty much any relationship out there, maybe not more so with other relationships, because some people can come together without actually forming attachments. You do you. Whatever it is that you choose to do, your choice. Um, but there's an overall grieving process that comes with it, right? That's just the reality of it, right? So what we're now going to look at is what's actually occurring in a dynamic, in a situation where somebody is being broken up with, right? But the reason that they're being broken up with is because the other people in their life pressured them or manipulated them or influenced them to break up with you or with whoever, right? This is a big issue of a lack of healthy boundaries. The very reality, the very fact that that person was able to be so easily, maybe easily is not the best word to use, just manipulated and influenced by people that are outside of the relationship shows me that they already have unhealthy boundaries, right? And by the way, I have been in at least one relationship where the person was pressured and manipulated and influenced to break up with me. What does this mean about the overall dynamic of you and the other? Well, they do not have healthy boundaries, because if they did, they wouldn't even have those people in their lives, right? if they actually had healthy boundaries, they would look at the people that are trying to influence, pressure, and manipulate them to break up with you, and they would be like, listen, this is not yours to have anything to say or do with. Bye. Yeah, get out, period. So that already tells me that the person lacks healthy boundaries. And let me say this before I continue with the rest of what I'm going to say. Individuals that lack healthy boundaries have an exceedingly more challenging time with consistent and sustainably long term relationships. And it's because they lack healthy boundaries that that's the case. That's just the reality of it. So, what is it going to look like when you're with somebody who lacks healthy boundaries and allows other people to pressure or influence or manipulate them to break up with you? It means that the whole intersubjective space between you and them has been corrupted by the allowance of external influence from other people. Which, again, by the way, I've talked about the intersubjective space between two people in a relationship multiple times in past videos, right? To understand it more deeply, think of it this way. Imagine you and another person are in a bubble, right? And it doesn't have to get into the idea of like claustrophobia. It's just to showcase what the boundaries of any relationship, or I should say any healthy relationship, are, right? Any unhealthy relationship, because somebody has unhealthy boundaries or permeable boundaries, it's going to be that the bubble that you both are in, that other person has allowed it to be so fucking permeable that the other people can actually step their fucking limbs in and be a part of the relationship. I've been in relationships that have lacked healthy boundaries. I've been in relationships where, no names, but say for instance, the person and I uh, were about to get into a conversation about something, and if I said one thing, they would like threaten to call somebody because they couldn't handle it. That showcases, and it wasn't even like it wasn't even like it was a I mean it ended up getting unhealthier and unhealthier over time, but it like you look at the situation and it's like why can't you just handle that on your own? Like, this is your relationship. Like, you're not being threatened. Nothing like that is happening. Just sit down, breathe, and deal with it. I know exactly why the person couldn't. Not going to get into it again, no names, but the reality of the matter is that if you were broken up with by somebody who was pressured, influenced, or manipulated by other people in their life, like friends and families, um, they lack healthy boundaries, right? So I'm trying to get you to see it for what it is. Grieve, absolutely. Like, if this is you and you found yourself being broken up with by somebody who was pressured, influenced, or manipulated by the people in their life to do so, grieve, of course. See it for what it is. And I'm going to say this and say this very clearly. You will probably learn over time, if you do the work, that they were actually not worth being with. Not that they're not worthy as an individual. They have a lot of fucking work to do on themselves. They're not good or bad or right or wrong. But when you come out on the other side and actually see it for what it is and be like, whoa, wait a second, this person lacks healthy boundaries. If they didn't lack healthy boundaries, they wouldn't have even had these people in their life that could have pressured, influenced, or manipulated them, which would have not even resulted in this fucked up breakup where I feel like I'm helpless and hopeless because somebody else is being pressured and influenced by other people in their lives because they lack healthy boundaries, because they have permeable boundaries. They've got these massive holes in the membrane where you can literally step your fucking limbs in, right? That's not healthy. Believe me, I've experienced myself and I have seen relationship dynamics where it's either lack of healthy boundaries or entirely boundaryless, right? And when I say that, yes, it hurts in the beginning, right? It's a grieving process. If you do the necessary work to actually see it for what it is and you come out on the other side, you will realize that it's like, oh, wait a second, I grieved as necessary, but I didn't lose anything because that individual is not healthy. Because if they were, none of that would have even happened. If they were healthy, they wouldn't have even had those individuals in their life that could have influenced it, pressured, and manipulated them. That's just the reality of it, right? And isn't it wild that we scurry about it, right? We're like, oh my god, I can't believe this is happening. This person broke up with me. They allowed other people to be manipulative and pressure them and influence them to break up with me. Yeah, they did. And quite honestly, that's fucked up. Quite honestly, to be as explicit as possible about it, it's fucking gross. Especially when you consider that every relationship, at least every healthy relationship, is boundaried. Every unhealthy relationship lacks healthy boundaries. Every unhealthy relationship is the type of relationship that we're talking about here, where the individual that broke up with you was influenced by other people outside of them and pressured, manipulated to break up with you, right? It really doesn't matter that the people in their lives might not care about them as much as you do. That doesn't matter. The biggest and most important thing to look at here is the lack of healthy boundaries. It's the permeability of the boundaries. It's the fact that somebody else could show up to them and be like, I'm going to manipulate you, I'm going to pressure you, and I'm going to influence you to break up with this person, period. And then that person's going to be like, okay, I lack healthy boundaries, and sure. you know, like it's absurd. It really is. But yeah, this person commented, and they were basically saying, well, what about somebody that is broken up with by somebody that is manipulated, influenced, or pressured by the friends and family in their lives that seemingly don't care about them? See it for what it is. If somebody that lacks healthy boundaries, I get that you have feelings involved, I get that you're attached. If somebody that lacks healthy boundaries breaks up with you, you're not losing anything. Yeah, you might have memories, you might have all of these experiences that you had with them in life. I've been through enough relationships in my life, and it wasn't many. It was more so about the duration, the quality rather than the quantity. Right? I've been through enough experiences of relationships and breakups in my life where I can honestly tell you that if you're being broken up with by somebody that is without healthy boundaries, it's kind of hard for me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. You're not losing anything. It might hurt in the beginning. It might make you think that there's something wrong with you. My honest advice is to just go to therapy and learn about healthy dynamics in relationships, because if what you're looking for is an actual long-term sustainable relationship that actually is healthy, what's going to be required is meeting an individual that has healthy boundaries, that is individuated and is differentiated. But you're going to have that for yourself first. If you're broken up with by somebody that was pressured, influenced, and manipulated by other people, honestly, you might find yourself in the future saying, "Oh, thank God." Oh, thankfully. Right? Because like you might like come around, to everything and be like, oh wow, wait a second, that was not what I thought it was, right? It all hurts in the beginning, it all hurts in the process, it all hurts in the midst of the collapse, right? But everything transforms when you see it for what it is. And when you realize that individuals that lack healthy boundaries are actually oftentimes exceedingly incapable of sustaining a long-term healthy relationship, you realize that you're not actually losing anything. You would have lost yourself if you stayed. If you really tried to push through and everything, you probably did lose yourself, because unhealthy relationships tend to bring people into a space. This has happened to me, by the way. I'm speaking from the heart. I'll end off with this. Um, Unhealthy relationships lack healthy boundaries, um, and they really bring people to lose themselves. Because, I mean, think about it real quick. When you lack healthy boundaries, you lack a known location to stop, right? Like I I know where I begin and where I end, and I know where other people begin and where other people end. I know my place in other people's lives, and I know what my place is not in other people's lives. People that lack healthy boundaries don't know what their place in other people's lives is, which is why you see people being pressured, manipulated, and influenced to break up with other people. The person that is pressuring them does not understand healthy boundaries. If they did, they would look at the situation and be like, wow, okay, that is a structure of two individuals coming together. There's an intersubjective space there. There's that bubble. There's a boundary there. That's not my fucking business. So therefore I'm not going to pressure them. I'm not going to manipulate them or influence them to break up with their partner. That's quite honestly fucked up and exceedingly unhealthy and dysfunctional, right? When you can see it for what it is, it can really transform how you look at it, right? When you understand that healthy relationships consist of healthy boundaries and would never, at least not from anything I've ever heard, consist of somebody who's being manipulated, pressured, and influenced by somebody else to break up with their partner. That's not the other person's position at all. It's not. So, in retrospect, in the grander scheme of things, and when you actually go through that grieving process and come out on the other side and you can see it for what it is, you might realize that you didn't actually lose anything. But if you were to stay, you would have definitely lost yourself.